So this is the most simple way to create a generative collection. So first off, you want to create your trait group. So the easiest way to do that, you can see that I already created a bunch, but if you don't know how to do it, you create 2 layers, swipe, and then group, and then you can rename them. We'll rename this as foreground. Now that you have all your trait groups created, the first thing I would suggest doing is creating a base layer. So in this case, we have a koala. Once that base layer is created, you want to actually just lower the opacity. The reason for that is you're going to be using this as a baseline for adding traits on top. So we have, let's say, a mouth. Now, when creating the mouth, let's say this is the base mouth, I'd actually lower the opacity so that when I create mouths on top, they end up being around the same shape or fit within the original one. That makes it so that when you generate, everything ends up lining up and staying pretty consistent. Same thing with the nose. These are all the same, but let's say this one, you wanted to create a different one. Well, now you know that this is the shape of the nose, and you might want to create something that kind of goes like in the same lines. So that, let's say this is the new nose, and we have a mouth. Well, it works. It's not the prettiest, but this is for an example. Same thing with the eyes. When creating the eyes, this was the first one, and then I just created multiple colors of the same one, but I had the opacity lowered and then ended up creating glasses or closed eyes, but you can see that they all line up with the eyes and they're not just randomly placed. So after that, we can go, let's say, with pants. Now here, what you can see is the lines themselves actually match up right to the arm, because what happens is, let's say I had the pants and my leg was like this, then now it's going onto the arm, so that when you're creating like tops on top, it just doesn't make sense. So it's important that when you're creating within a character, that you follow the lines, and the only time it's okay to kind of go out of those lines is when it's not intersecting with existing stuff. So now you could, maybe decide, I don't know what this is, but it could be an extension of the trait. And when you're adding the top, then there won't be any overlap. Another thing is, let's say you want to create, but you don't want to have pants in every single one, right? Right now you have pants in all. You can create an empty layer, and what that will do is once you generate, you'll have some that don't have pants. Now, same thing with the tops. You can see the outlines, and you can use that to your advantage. So let's say you wanted to do a Kobe angel. Well, you could decide to create some kind of wing, but you would make it so the wing actually goes over this line, versus let's say you created a wing and you went over the line, because when you actually have your body in full opacity, those 2 lines look like they're one, whereas this one goes over. And certainly if you have a background, let's say, and you actually put color to these wings, you'll see that this one looks like a wing versus this one looks like something's off, right? So it's important to actually follow those lines. Now, this goes the same thing with all the traits, where you really want to build on top of the body on how they fit. Another thing is you might want to place the layers in a different way. So for this example, with the hearts, if you have this hat right here, it actually goes on top of the eyes. Some people might like it and some people not. So then it's your choice. Maybe you want to have the eyes on top so that even if there's a hat, you'll always see the full eye, right? And then let's say foregrounds. This is the one that I just created. Maybe, you have some with like tall grass. With foregrounds, what's great is because it's the top layer, nothing will overlay on top. So it really has the control to take as much space as it wants. And then you could also have an empty layer so that not all of them have a foreground. But in general, the easiest way to create a functional collection is creating that base layer, because that is what all the traits end up aligning to. And if you don't create a base layer, then you might end up with something, let's say, like this wing right here that overlaps with the arm. Now that you have all your files ready, it's time to export them. So what you want to do is go all the way to the bottom and make sure that background colors are off so that each layer is a clear PNG. And if not, they'll save with a white background. And then what you want to do is actually select every single layer that you want to export in every single category. So you make sure that you select every single thing. And then once everything is selected, you come up here and then you see here share layers. You'll save everything as PNG files. Once you do that, you can save it to Google Drive. You can save it to files, save it to photos, even like airdrop it to your computer. And yeah, once you have your files, now you're ready to use the creator portal on print.world and create a collection. So make sure to stay tuned for the next video.